The warm scent of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee filled the air inside Clara's diner. Outside, the neon sign flickered in the rainy dusk, casting a soft red glow over the wet pavement. This small-town diner was a staple, where neighbors greeted each other by name and old friends gathered for hearty breakfasts and endless coffee refills. But today, for Evelyn Brooks, something felt different. She'd been a regular here for years. A single mother, she had raised her son, Jordan, through endless double shifts and countless sacrifices. Evelyn had wiped his tears, celebrated his milestones, and instilled in him the values her own mother once had: strength, dignity, and patience, even when confronted with ignorance. But patience, Evelyn knew, wasn't infinite. She sat at her usual booth, the cracked leather seat familiar beneath her as she sipped her black coffee, waiting for her blueberry pancakes. She wore a simple blouse and jeans, nothing fancy, but carried herself with quiet grace. She had no idea that her very presence would soon become a problem. Across the diner, Officer Derek Langston sat at the counter, stirring his coffee with idle swirls. He was a heavy-set, middle-aged cop with a thick mustache and an air of arrogance, the kind that years of unchecked authority often bred. His uniform stretched tightly over his gut, his badge glinting in the dull light. He noticed Evelyn, alone in a booth, a black woman. Something in him itched. Taking up a whole booth for herself, he muttered under his breath. The waitress, Carla, a woman in her late 50s with kind eyes and a tired smile, heard him but kept wiping the counter, her hands moving a little more stiffly. Everyone in town knew Langston's reputation. He had a history of targeting folks who didn't fit into his narrow view of the world. No one ever called him out. Evelyn, engrossed in her worn copy of Baldwin's The Fire Next Time, didn't notice his glare. She was used to the subtle stuff, the lingering stares, the forced smiles, the assumptions. But today wouldn't be subtle. Langston stood, his boots heavy on the linoleum floor as he crossed the diner. He stopped at Evelyn's table, looming over her. "You waiting on someone?" he asked, voice laced with condescension. Evelyn looked up, surprised. "Excuse me," I said. Langston repeated, louder this time. "Are you waiting on someone, or just hogging this booth?" Evelyn blinked, momentarily stunned by the unnecessary aggression. There were empty booths all around. She glanced around and noticed the diner had gone quiet. Carla froze mid-wipe. An elderly couple at the next table avoided eye contact. The teenage busboy, Danny, stared at the floor. "I'm just having breakfast," Evelyn replied calmly. Langston scoffed. "Looks like you've been here a while. Sure you're not loitering?" A knot formed in Evelyn's stomach, but she kept her voice steady. "I ordered food. I'm not bothering anyone." Langston chuckled under his breath. Some people don't appreciate certain folks making themselves too comfortable. The words hung heavy in the air. Carla bit her lip, but said nothing. Danny's hands shook as he stacked plates. Evelyn took a slow breath. She had dealt with men like Langston before. Men who wore their authority like armor, who thrived on intimidation. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "There's a time to walk away and a time to stand your ground." "And if I don't leave?" she asked, her voice even. Langston smirked. "Then I'll make you." Before Evelyn could respond, a deep voice cut through the heavy silence. "I'd like to see you try." The entire diner froze. Evelyn turned toward the entrance. There, standing tall in his crisp police chief uniform, was Jordan Brooks, her son. Langston's face went pale. Jordan's presence filled the room. At 6 feet 3 inches, broad-shouldered, with his silver police chief badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights, he was a commanding sight. The holstered gun at his hip was a silent reminder. He wasn't just another officer. He was the top authority in town. Evelyn felt her heart swell with a complex mix of pride and relief. Her son, her boy, the same Jordan she'd packed school lunches for, who she'd scolded for staying out too late, who she'd taught to be twice as good to get half as far. And now, he was the one holding power. Langston's bravado melted away. The smug grin slid off his face, replaced by panic. "Mom," Jordan said, his voice calm but sharp, as he approached the booth. He placed a firm hand on Evelyn's shoulder. Everything all right? Evelyn could hear the controlled anger beneath his calm tone. She didn't need to answer. He already knew. Langston stammered, trying to recover. Chief Brooks. Hey, I was just making sure everything was in order. Jordan's jaw tightened. A public diner. My mother. Sitting here, minding her business. And you thought it needed policing? Langston's hands twitched. No, Chief. I didn't mean. Jordan pulled out his badge, placing it on the table with a heavy metallic clink. The sound echoed in the stunned silence. Badge number, Jordan demanded, his voice low. Langston hesitated. Jordan didn't flinch. Now! Langston's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. 39784, he muttered. Jordan nodded. Good. That's going in the report. Langston's face flushed deep red. Come on, Chief, this is all a misunderstanding. Was it? Jordan's voice sliced through the excuse. You targeted my mother, harassed her, disrespected her, and now you're backpedaling because you know exactly who she is and who I am. Langston's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Apologize, Jordan ordered. Langston's jaw clenched. His pride was a living thing, clawing at him. Do it, Jordan pressed. Langston's fists balled at his sides before he finally muttered, I'm sorry. Jordan stepped closer. For what? Langston's teeth ground together. For disrespecting you, ma'am. Evelyn sat up straighter. You're damn right you are. Jordan leaned back slightly. Now, Officer Langston, you're going to head straight to the station and wait for a call from Internal Affairs. Langston's breath hitched. Chief, that's... No discussion. Jordan cut him off. Go. Langston stormed out, the diner's door slamming behind him. The diner slowly came back to life as the tension drained from the room. Carla wiped at her eyes with a napkin. Danny let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Evelyn reached over and squeezed Jordan's hand. You didn't have to do that. Jordan met her gaze. I absolutely did. She smiled, pride and gratitude mingling in her eyes. You've become quite the man. Carla finally spoke. Chief Brooks, she said softly. Your mother raised one hell of a son. Evelyn chuckled. Oh, I know. Jordan smiled, but in the back of his mind, he knew it wasn't over. Men like Langston didn't just walk away quietly. And Jordan Brooks wasn't about to let this one slide. Outside, Langston sat fuming in his squad car, gripping the steering wheel tight. His hands shook with rage. He wasn't finished, not yet. He pulled out his phone. I need a favor, he muttered into the receiver, his voice dripping with venom. The fight was far from over. But Jordan Brooks was ready for it.